Well, John Allen Jr. is the associate editor of Catholic website Crux and a Vatican specialist. He joins us now from Denver. John, thank you very much for your time and thank you for joining us here on TRT World. So how popular then is the Pope and Catholicism in Africa?
Well, I mean, Africa is easily the zone of the Catholic Church's greatest growth these days. The Catholic population of sub-Saharan Africa in the 20th century shot up from 1.9 million to more than 130 million, which is a growth rate of almost 7,000%. These days, booming seminaries in Africa are dispatching priests to serve all over the world, including in Europe and the United States. And so at one level, this is sort of a victory lap for the Catholic Church in Africa, an opportunity to celebrate its dynamism. On the other hand, Pope Francis aspires to being a peace pope. We saw the role, for example, he played in healing Cold War tensions between the United States and Cuba. Africa is in many ways a conflict-scarred continent, including these days most prominently the Central African Republic, where later this week Francis plans to become the first pope ever to step foot into an active conflict zone. And so clearly he has grand ambitions for this trip to try to be a change agent on the African continent and to galvanize the Catholic Church to play that role as well.
Is his visit, is it going to be welcomed, do you think, by non-Catholic communities in Africa?
Well, listen, I mean, Africa is a continent, a deeply religious, deeply spiritual continent where religious leaders enjoy enormous respect. And in addition, where religious leaders often play a kind of overtly political role that by Western standards of church-state separation would seem a bit odd. I mean, for example, the current cardinal of the Democratic Republic of Congo was actually for a while the de facto head of state in the transition from the Mobutu regime to the new situation. He headed the Constitutional Council, in effect possessed the full powers of a head of state. And so in that context, I think both the Pope's spiritual message and the Pope's political message, and let's not make any mistake, he certainly has one on this trip, at both levels, I think he is going to be keenly attended to. And I think at the popular level, I mean, Francis is a great popular figure everywhere he goes. He's going to attract vast and wildly enthusiastic crowds all along the way.
He's set to highlight the interreligious conflicts in Africa that you've touched upon and you've mentioned there. How successful do you think he's going to be then?
Well, I think the Central African Republic in some ways may be the real test. I mean, this is a country that has been torn apart by a bitter conflict since 2013 that pits radical Muslim Salaka militias against Christian militias. It's one of the few countries in the world where you actually have armed Christian extremist groups known as the anti-Balaka militias. And it's a country that is 80% Christians, where Muslims are a distinct minority. So Francis, as a world-renowned Christian leader, could theoretically have an enormous impact in calling on those Christian militias to lay down their arms, or at least to observe the conditions of ceasefire in order to allow looming national elections to unfold peacefully. So I think that will be the real test, the acid test, so to speak, of the effectiveness of the message he's coming to Africa to present. Whether what happens in coming weeks and months in the Central African Republic moves that nation towards greater peace and tranquility, or whether shortly after the Pope leaves town, the violence reignites.
Okay, John Allen Jr., thank you very much for your time here on TRT World.